Everybody has the agenda. If you don't, they're on the table over there. I am going to go off script for a couple of minutes if you, hope you don't mind. As we will see, there's a child care subcommittee update today. And one of the great things that our subcommittee did, they got together with a subcommittee from GIC, and they collaborated. And I think it was, we're very proud that you did that. It was a good collaboration. I am also involved in a couple of regional think tanks, and there is a task force that has been put together to deal with a 20-year plan for the region. It is being headed by our former secretary, Soloco Secretary, Mr. Tom Lennox. And I put this first because Tom has to leave. I've spoken to those representatives, and I would like to offer to the board that we adopt that task force as a subcommittee or task force of Soloco. And that would be, we wouldn't have to commit any staff because they already have a group together, which includes Councilman Kemp, Dan Wood from Bluffton, of course, Tom Lennox, and a few others. And that subcommittee would do like all the other subcommittees. Come to us, give us regular reports, and when they're complete their task and their mission, they would come forth with recommendations for all the jurisdictions. So what I'd like for the board to do is ask any questions of Tom Lennox, who's going to head that task force, and then after all questions are done, have a vote on whether or not we want to adopt that as a Soloco subcommittee. I'm sorry I didn't prep you for this. This is, I haven't talked to anybody. I'm sorry about that, so I just didn't have time. So any questions about this proposal from the board first? You let me off easy.
Are you going to have him clarify exactly what the mission of the task force is?
Just like any other task force that we have Soloco, step one is their mission statement. What do they want to accomplish? And I'll ask them to, once they have that formed, that they come to Soloco and present that to us. And then any regular updates that they might have when they're ready. And then just, again, as we may hear from the child care, when they're done, they'll come to us and say, here's what we think you as jurisdictions should do. And that's the same thing we did with the housing trust, the stormwater ordinance, everything else that Soloco has done.
Mayor, if I could? Yes, for the record, Patsy Bryson, Town of Hilton Head Town Council. The mayor regrets he couldn't be here today, but it sounds like a great idea. I know Mr. Lennox. I'm familiar with his work, and I would certainly support making this a subcommittee.
And if anybody has any questions for Mr. Lennox about what they want to accomplish, I asked him to come here today. I know he has another appointment, so if there's any questions about this task force, Tom's here to beat him up if you'd like.
Come later and do a presentation.
I think that's a good idea. Tom, you good with that?
Second,
We would like, the board would like you, once you get organized, if you don't mind, to come here when you're ready and give a presentation on what you want to accomplish.
you're well.
Good idea, Mayor. So I'd like to ask the board, would you like this task force to proceed as a task force of Soloco, or do you want to wait till that presentation comes forward?
I'd be in favor of it, but I think we need to hear what they're planning on doing.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'm good with you. Getting the type of experience and free work from a couple of guys that you just mentioned is good enough for me. I know them well enough
It is,
to say yay now, or we can wait until they.
it is free work. So, yes, Tom, if you,
Give you a
then come forward, please.
30-second outline of what we hope to accomplish. The members of this task force are Truett, Ribbon, Dan Wood, Alan Ward, John Kemp, and Dean Moss from Beaufort. And our goal is to create an outline to be used by Soloco of what a 20-year plan process would look like. Given the 9 or 10 elements required by the state in each local government's comprehensive plan, integrate that into an outline to be used. The outline would include the elements required in the comp plan, public involvement, engagement of the different local governments, but it would be no plan. It would be the outline of how to do the plan, more of a process.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. So I know this is not on the agenda, and I surprised everyone. So why don't we'll take a vote at the next meeting, okay? And that way, I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I didn't prep you all, so.
Mayor Williams, I think this will hopefully, after you hear Rob Merchant's presentation, it might be something that work in parallel with task force.
Okay,
With
great.
what Rob Merchant's going to present today, and we'd like to present in more detail at another meeting.
Great. So,
Real quick, maybe this is clarified in the next meeting as the mission comes together, but I guess my only question, just based on the 30-second synopsis, would be how does the plan fit into some of the local municipalities or jurisdictions getting ready to revisit their comprehensive plans? So I know we're about a year out from that. So how would the plan fit into that structure? And maybe that's clarified later, but that's the only question that came to my mind immediately.
The recommendation coming out of any recommendation to multi-jurisdictional bodies would be rigid flexibility.
wow. Wow. Oh, wow. I'm going to have to Google that, Tom.
Will not work for another.
Understood.
Good point. Thanks.
All right, I think there's enough questions, and what we'll do is, everybody understands what it is. I'm sorry to surprise everyone. Let's not make any decisions. I'll put it on the agenda for a vote next month. And Tom, could you be prepared to speak again, or someone from the committee? Are you going to meet before then?
Yes.
So if you could have someone represent the task force and come before the board, and then the board can make a decision from there.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, board members, for tolerating my little surprise. So let's go on to the agenda now. The first item is the update on the results of the plastic bag survey. Councilwoman Chair Alice Howard will give us that.
Yes, we extended it till April 1st. We needed more responses from businesses. I didn't bring them, Rob Merchant brought cards here. If you know of a restaurant owner in Beaufort County And others, we need more responses from businesses, and of course, we'll take more responses from individuals. It's been very good on individual responses. Was it over 3,000 last time I heard? So that's some great results. And then, once we get the results, we're gonna schedule some public meetings around the county. The subcommittee that was formed for this had members of Keep Beaufort Beautiful on it, and staff from all over the county, from the planning staff primarily, from the municipalities and the county that came up with the survey, and some volunteer groups like the Port Royal Sound Foundation. And so as soon as we start getting that, we'll start populating what came out of the survey and getting response in public meetings to see what people think beyond the survey. And Coastal Conservation League deserves a lot of credit too for helping us with this. So it's still a work in progress. So please pick up some of these cards on your way out if you know a restaurant owner or business that would just fill it out. Doesn't take very long to fill out the survey.
Alice, would you like to be put on April's agenda after that survey is done?
I'm not sure we'll be ready yet. I think more important is to have the growth boundaries and subcommittee on your next agenda.
Okay, all right,
As
so
far as what,
you'll let me know when when you want to get on the agenda.
yes, sir.
Okay. So you just saved the time that I took up on the earlier thing. Next, we have the BJHT, the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust, Mr. Claude Hicks. Mr. Hicks, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of Soloco. Let's see. Somebody's doing something right. It's not me. We wanted to spend just a few moments today to talk about what has happened between the last time that we spoke before Soloco and now. And there, as Alice said, it is a work in progress. Housing is always a work in progress. Well, let's try this. So this has got tape wrapped around it, so that might not be a good sign.
Can we,
There you go.
There we go.
okay.
For those of you who are not familiar, Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust consists of 9 members. It's a regional organization in that 9 regional members, 9 regional municipalities, both counties, joined together to primarily do one thing. They realized that individually, it was going to be a very difficult task to try and bring housing to their individual municipalities, but together in a regional approach, that works. It has worked. I will tell you that a lot of people were perhaps a little questioning with respect to whether it's going to work. I think it's worked way better than anybody ever thought. In December of last year, we gave out almost $2 million in grants and dollars that went to grantees and to projects to generate housing. We are a 501c3 organization. We have been since the middle of last year or the first of last year. Why housing matters? Economic growth. This is our leader wherever we talk, and we have spoken to over 100 individuals and organizations across Beaufort and Jasper counties. We are consistently saying economic growth is the number one initiative. Without housing, there is no economic growth. Without economic growth, there is no community. Workers need places to live. Currently, they don't have any place to live. In this area, we are approaching on a 3-bedroom apartment, $3,000 a month in rent. On a 2-bedroom apartment, we are approaching about $2,500. And on a 1-bedroom, we are approaching $2,000. So those are all dollars that we expect and pricing that we expect is going to occur over the next 6 to 12 months. Go back one. Thank you. Housing availability affects quality of life. There are 1,000 surveys out there that draw a direct line between housing and the quality of that housing and the quality of the life of the people who live in it. Whether it's their education, whether it is their nutrition, whether it is their socialization, there's a direct line between the ability to have safe and affordable housing and what your life looks like. As I said before, this is a regional collaboration. I will tell you, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and regional collaborations work rarely because you have a whole bunch of people with opinions and they rarely come together. This is an outstanding example of regional collaboration. Senator Davis used this to bring us some state money by saying, this is regional. Look at how many people are sitting at the table. And he was successful in doing that. Here's some of the bad news. We have failed to get back to building permit level that we were at between 93 and 2002. It is rising slowly, and we expect that we may get a little bit of increase by the time we get to 2026, 2027. But right now we are holding steady on building permits.
Well, does this include multifamily and single family?
Yes. Housing availability nationwide. Right now, we are 8.2 million units short across the country. It is expected by the end of 2035 that we'll be at 10 million units short. This is particularly, I guess, an onerous statistic in that for the first time in about 50 years, we have crested over the dividing line between home ownership and rentals. Rentals are now a higher percentage of our population than home ownership. So when you look at, I've got children who are supposed to be old enough to think, and they all are looking at perhaps a house, maybe by the time they're 40, maybe, depending on what the economy looks like. So apartments and multifamily living is here. It is going to be here for the foreseeable future. We need to do what we can do to make sure that those multifamily units can reach all of the residents that we need to house. Next, please. This is the single most talked about slide. We asked Dr. Laura Ulrich to come to the symposium last year to talk about housing. She is the Federal Reserve's leading expert on housing. And there were a lot of very important people in this room when she popped this slide up. What the Federal Reserve does out of Richmond is to keep track of how many houses in any particular area can be accessed on a median price by people who don't go over 30% of their income to pay for rent or for housing payment. In the last 21 years, the total number of houses that met that requirement are 0. So there has been no house sold where the person buying it paid 30% or under of their total income for that house. What this tells you is that obviously there has been great success and great capacity on the higher end, great communities. Everybody wants to live here, but with respect to affordability and with respect to families being able to live in a place and not spend more than 30% of their income, there hasn't been a single house that the Federal Reserve has kept track of. This is a dynamic that has to change. We can't have an environment where young families, young professionals, young teachers, young police officers, young nurses have nowhere to go. When you go above 30% of your income, it directly affects your ability to put food on the table, your ability to keep your transportation up, your ability to socialize, do the things that you would like to do. You are now trapped in a house where you're paying 40 or 50 or 60% of your income in rent or mortgage payment. Next, please. So we looked at who was cost burdened. So if you take a look on the right-hand side, in Beaufort and Jasper County, 46.3% of renters are cost burdened. That means they spend more than 50%. Extremely cost burdened means they're spending over 50% of their income on housing costs. This is a number that needs to come down. We need to be able to figure this out. And it's a variety of things. It won't be resolved by building housing. It will be resolved by higher wage employees, new economic and regional building and construction and development. So this is what we look like right now. The new HUD limits are going to come out within the next couple of weeks. So if you look at median family income, at 80% in Beaufort, that would be $80,700 per family. Their monthly affordability would be about $2,000. If you look at that family in the 80%, they have 2 parents and a couple of kids. They're looking at that 3-bedroom apartment. It's not 2018, it's closer to $3,000. So they're already in the hole. We expect when we get the new HUD numbers that the income is going to be higher, but the affordability is going to be higher as well because costs have gone up. So here's something that has happened here that has happened in a lot of regions and a lot of municipalities. You guys have heard about the missing middle. If you look right at the AMI percentage, you see 80 to 100%. Those are people who don't qualify for a tax credit or a subsidized rent, but they also don't qualify because they don't make enough money to buy a house. So they are stuck in the middle. That AMI percentage, I would bet you that if I come back here a year from now, that percentage is going to be higher because you're going to have people who are getting raises, who are earning good salaries, but they can't afford to buy a house, nor can they afford, they make too much money to be able to afford to live in any kind of tax credit housing. We looked at what can we do with the state. The state is as bureaucratic as any other state in the country. We're working to help them really figure out how to streamline their processes. Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust is the only entity in Beaufort and Jasper counties that participates and is qualified in the state home repair program, both from a repair perspective and we went and got our environmental remediation certificate, which was me and Jennifer sitting in a room for 8 hours listening to lead-based paint. 8 hours we'll never get back. We are looking at how that affects this particular area. The biggest effect of doing both of those things is that we can now look at a house that's older than 1978 as its construction date. That applies to a lot of housing in the entire, both Beaufort and Jasper counties. We want to increase and create gap funding resources with the state. We want to provide low-interest mortgage opportunities. We have programs from our grantees for first-time home buyers. We can't find a home that they can actually afford, even if we gave them the money. Hardyville is the best example of what we did right down the street. That worked, but it worked because the municipality gave, the contractor gave, the developer gave, and then we were able to find some other resources. That's what it's going to take in the future to really house people. We want to encourage a revision of the qualified allocation plan. What does this mean? This is the plan that the state goes by on an annual basis to determine how it's going to give out dollars, how it's going to give out tax credits, how it's going to give out those dollars that can be used in construction or development process. Why is this important to us? When I got here, which was a year ago, there was a provision in the qualified allocation plan that said, you may not get points for your development unless you have 1,000 jobs within 1 mile of your project. Nothing in Beaufort and Jasper County applied for that particular issue. So everybody that came to look at us knew they were already 10 points behind. 10 points in the LIHTC business is deadly. You're not getting your deal done. And finally, we want to expand funding opportunities and create incentives for private sector development. There's a lot of money in the private sector that is looking to make investments, but also looking to do good things. And workforce housing is one of those things that they love to talk about, they love to make an investment in, because they can also look at their shareholders and say, see what we did? We did something good, workforce housing. And everybody applauds, and all the executives get to keep their jobs. They've done something good. Next, please. What can we do locally? We can partner with local jurisdictions to drive policy change. We have to figure out how do we get something out of the ground in a shorter period of time and a less costly process than we have now. We need to expand our infrastructure access and reduce our costs. Everybody is looking at the cost of water and sewer as a deal killer. When you look at how fast it's going up, at what that means to a project, it forces a lot of people just to walk away and say, we can't, the project won't hold it. We'd have to charge rents of $4,000 to be able to pay. We need to overcome resistance and build public support. There is not in my backyard mentality everywhere in the United States, everywhere. What we have to do to combat this is to educate people on what it is, but more importantly, educate people on who's going to live there. That is the biggest fear, is who's going to live there, what's it going to look like in 5 years, is it going to be managed properly, what will it do to our constituents who live close to it or next to it. We have put together a regional cooperation facilitation through a 2025 Solutions Forum. This is going to be in September. We will send you all, save the dates. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to put around the table developers, government representatives, planners, home builders, home constructors, and those people who are involved in the housing process to talk about what it is that we can do to try and help get things out of the ground faster, less expensively, and really put the product in the communities that everybody wants to see. So you'll be seeing more about that as we go up closer to September. This is the save the date that you'll get, Blueprint for Change. We want to bring everybody to the table. We want to hear what they have to say. We want to hear what the problems are. And then we want to try and figure out how collectively we can work together to provide solutions. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We look forward to our next meeting. Any questions that I can answer for anyone?
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. First, anyone from the board, any questions, and then I'll open up to the public.
Chairman,
Yes.
we talk about Buford Jasper all the time. How do you when we were developing this way back, we always had that problem that Hilton Head would have one set of figures, Buford would have another from the south to the north, and then you have Jasper, which is another set of figures. How do you separate that when you do a thing where it says Buford and Jasper's included, or Jasper's included with Buford? So what I'm trying to get at is, where is the money? Do you look at when the money is spent and how well it's spent? For example, $1,000 in Buford would do one thing, but $1,000 in Jasper would do a lot more.
We recognize that from a HUD perspective, the numbers that we look at, this is what's called the Hilton Head MSA. Everyone in both counties is in that MSA. So you get a skewed kind of vision of what it's really like. You're looking at Hilton Head product along with Jasper County product, and it doesn't make any sense. From an economic perspective, we know that everything is moving towards Jasper because of lower cost of land, less expensive development costs. We have developers who are coming in all the time asking, where can I look where's going to be the next market. So we do differentiate. HUD doesn't differentiate at all. It's blind to Hilton Head versus Jasper. It's blind to Hilton Head versus Yemassee. But what we do is we look at what are those numbers really saying. And if you looked at the one slide, we divided it between Beaufort and Jasper County. We know that Jasper County is going to grow substantially over the next 5 to 10 years. We want to make sure that we have workforce housing in that mix. But it is very difficult when you try and blend the two together because you almost can't. They are separate and distinct municipalities. They're separate and distinct communities. And so developers know when they come into those communities, they've got to adapt based on where they are. The way you develop in Hilton Head is substantially different than the way you develop in Jasper County.
And to follow up on that, when you did the project in Hardyville, I would like to, could you ever give a presentation on how that works?
Sure.
I mean, it just, that particular framework, so if we have an opportunity, we know there's a framework there.
Sure. I'd be happy to do that. And so Mayor Williams led the way in getting that project done. But a lot of people had to say yes in order to get that done. Habitat had to say yes with respect to whether it was going to do something it wasn't used to doing, which is create 10 units. The contractor had to say yes because they were doing it on a fixed price, and it was slightly below market, not greatly below market. Municipality, the city had to agree on a whole bunch of things in order to make this work. And then we stepped up with first-time home buyers assistance. So we gave each of the residents there enough money to put down to be able to buy the house. A lot of things had to happen, but I'm happy to come back and talk about how that can happen in your communities as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anyone from the public like to ask a question? Yes.
My name is Carlton Dallas. I'll be hopefully speaking about.
Please come to the microphone because we're recording you.
Thank you. My name is Carlton Dallas, and my background is global petroleum, 34 years, including 5 continents. There's a lot of foreign capital that wants to come into the U.S. Are there programs that make that easy for them to invest in housing, as this gentleman has just spoken about?
Great. Mr. Hicks, you might want to get his card.
Absolutely. Most of the time right now, the investment in housing from international corporations is done through a syndicator. They will give that money, they will form a pool, and then a syndicator will decide which projects they're going to send that money to. The most prolific is Santander Bank. We don't have any of those in South Carolina. They're a Spanish bank, and they, along with RBC from Canada, have invested a huge amount of money, but they're investing them in exchange for getting tax credits. So there's very little in the way of international investment straight up. We're going to go in and we're going to expect a certain ROI, and we're going to make that investment. But the interest in South Carolina will mean that those international investors are going to head our way pretty quickly. South Carolina has become a very, very hot market and will continue to be probably over the next at least decade.
Great. Thank you. We're going to now go on to, thank you, Mr. Hicks. And also, Jess, you have that. Could you make sure that this ends up on the SoLoco tab on Hardyville and Bluffton, please? Yeah, I can post it. Thank you, Jess. Next, we have Mr. Olandar Lewis, who is the chair of our Child Care Subcommittee. Welcome.
I'd like to say good morning to the SoLoco board
Good morning.
and also Mayor Williams. So again, my name is Orlando Lewis. You guys have identified me as the chair for the Early Child Care Subcommittee. And our subcommittee comprises of members of Ms. Jody Levitt, Mr. McGill, also Mr. Tom Hines, and we have a new member who has joined us, and he's been very instrumental, Mr. John Score. We wanted to bring an action item to Soloco, and one of our first strategic recommendations is number one, that Soloco accepts the try-share resolution template. You all have a copy of that particular template in your possession. Next, we would like to recommend that Soloco distributes this resolution to all municipalities to sign up on this resolution. And then third action item is to present the signed resolution to the Beaufort and Jasper County State Delegation and champion this resolution in Columbia. I know we've had previous discussions about the tri-share model. I don't know if we need to do a refresher on this particular model as relates to what is currently taking place regarding the tri-share model. Just as a recap, the tri-share model was first initiated in Michigan. It's also being used in North Carolina as well. And as we indicated during the previous meetings, the tri-share model is a model that includes a 33% investment by the government, state government that is, a 33% investment by the employer, and then also a 33% investment from the employee to contribute toward the cost of childcare. And our request is that should the template be signed and championed in Columbia, that Beaufort and Jasper County be considered as the pilot location for this particular model to kick off in the state of South Carolina.
This is a great recommendation. I speak for myself, of course. And the Soloco group, one of the great things about Soloco, in the past, we have gotten together and lobbied through resolutions on certain issues. The one that immediately comes to mind was with our support of the business license reforms that were done. And we all got together and supported that. Typically, and this is for the Soloco board, since this board has no legislative power, what we would ask the Soloco members to take this back and put it on your agenda to have your councils debate and decide whether or not they would support something like this. So, Mr. Lewis, and Mr. Score, and all your committee members, thank you for this. This is exactly the kind of thing that we like to see come out of subcommittees, is a suggested action item such as this. So, any questions first from the board?
Mr. Lewis, when I bring this to my council, I would like to include the source of the data that we have in here as well. Can you send that separately in an email to us?
Yes, we can send that. Not a problem at all.
Anyone else have a question about this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Have you had any preliminary conversations with representatives from the delegation, and if so, what's the feedback that they've provided?
We have not.
Okay.
We just had our members from our subcommittee to do just some legwork in other states to see how it's progressing in those states, and so far it's very successful. So once again, our goal is to make us a pilot for the use of this particular model, but no one as of yet.
I think the action plan would be that each of the jurisdictions that are involved in Soloco, they would come back and say, okay, we support this resolution, and then we send it up to the state as a group.
Yes.
Whether that group is 100%, 80%, whatever, each jurisdiction would have to decide whether or not they would support this. When we send it up to the state, I think we will need the data that because that our legislators will ask for it. But first step is to make sure that the data is given to each jurisdiction, and we, each jurisdiction go back, and it's up to everybody here whether they want to do that, and ask their councils to support this resolution.
Yes, sir. No problem.
So I would suggest that to each member of Soloco, and it's not a requirement. It's what you each feel about this, and then we'll take whatever group of people we have or jurisdictions that we have and take it to the state.
Would it be possible for a presentation to council?
Yes,
I put it on the agenda, then
we'd be more than happy.
talk to council as a group and express your plan, basically.
Yes, not a problem.
So Orlando or Jody, whoever from your subcommittee, obviously our councils are going to, they're just not going to accept this. They're going to want to know about it. They're going to want to debate it. So I would suggest that each jurisdiction who want you or one of the members to connect to have you come to their meeting. Is that acceptable?
Not a problem.
Okay, great.
You all should have our contact information. And
Okay.
I'll make sure you get an email that will indicate that.
Right, okay. And, these are the kinds of things, this coordination, and I'm going to address Josh or anyone else like Mr. Wood who want to be the coordinator. And I did speak to Mr. Wood about taking on that responsibility for this child care subcommittee. So that would be if they, rather than everything come through me,
Yes, sir.
it would go through that coordinator to make sure, they would make sure that it got out to whoever. And so that's exact, I know I've had some questions from some of my recruits as to what this role would be.
Okay, not a problem.
This is a good example.
And also, FYI, for the general public, we do have copies of the resolution available for you all as well.
Yeah, everything should come to us electronically so we can make sure everybody has it.
Okay, fantastic.
Great. Thank you. Terrific. Anybody from the public have any questions for Mr. Lewis or any of the staff members?
I do have a question.
Go right ahead. I think you've run out your limit, though. I didn't see your hand up. You got it?
Soloco is with the governments, right? Have you gone to the schools and asked the same thing?
We have not. No.
Would that be prudent for you to do that? I mean, as you joint, because they're always, when you go to the school boards, they're always talking about early learning and all that.
Right.
So as a joint Jasper total or Buford total, it would be school board and Soloco?
Well, one of the things that we're currently doing is we are assessing who would be great members to join the Soloco subcommittee, so we can have more dialogue regarding what is taking place, boots on the ground. But because this is an initiative that's targeting child care entities, we felt that we wanted to make sure that Soloco was the first entities to be engaged in this particular discussion,
Thank you.
being that it's a paid service for child care entities.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next we have, this is the Growth Boundaries Subcommittee, which we formed a couple of years ago. Mr. Rob Merchant was good enough to head up this subcommittee. So, Mr. Merchant, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of
Good morning.
And I promise I will try to respect that 1 hour cutoff. As the mayor mentions, Soloco put together a committee to look at growth in the region and look at growth boundaries and also look at our comprehensive plans and see how they mesh together. if we can go to the next slide. So this committee primarily started as municipal and county planners meeting together. And we realized early on that there were several limitations to this simply being a staff-driven effort. You know, that we definitely all have our regular jobs. We're all very busy.
Him again.
That reminds
I
me a
don't know
little
how to
bit
turn
of
it off.
Scooby-Doo. But we started at the local government level. But we realized the importance early on of bringing in some regional partners, such as the Coastal Conservation League, Open Land Trust, South Carolina Lowcountry Sentinel Landscape, Beaufort Jasper Water Sewer Authority, because they definitely they're seeing this this vision from a regional level, and that's kind of what our charge was. But so we met together, and I'll start off with this slide. When we typically, when I give a presentation about comprehensive planning, I always like to start with photographs. And one of the things that we always say to the community is that we're very diverse, but if we look at what we value most about the Lowcountry, we pretty much would all agree on the same things, that we love the natural beauty of our area, we love the landscape, the quality of life, the history, but we recognize that those things, that we're treasuring these things in a very dynamic environment. So we're growing very fast in the coastal county, and now, for a long time it was Beaufort, now it's Jasper County as the fastest growing in the state. And that this growth has consequences. And so each of us have a comprehensive plan that provides a roadmap of how we navigate that, how we keep those things that we treasure, but then we have to balance all the interests. And I think that the first two presentations today kind of give an idea. We have the issues, not only of trying to preserve land and growing smart, but also affordable housing and childcare, all these issues related to a fast-growing region. So really what we're proposing and what we want to present this morning is what we believe are some of the considerations or concerns about fast growth that we think are going to have greater consequence if we continue to plan separately. And I think that we can be in a better position to plan if we have a kind of a joint future land use framework, a joint roadmap among the region. And I think this is why SoLoco was put together. We recognize that, individually, we certainly, we love our local communities and we, we do everything we can to make sure that we're preserving quality of life, but, we all work together as a region, and what happens over the boundary of our own community, it often, we impact each other. And so having this shared vision is important. I'd like to introduce, and I can't remember, Taylor Ladd from Beaufort Jasper Water Sewer Authority. We're going to just run through a few slides, and then we're hoping to wrap it up and kind of give you an idea of what we would like to see as the next steps.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Taylor Ladd, planning manager with Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer. So we looked at some of the population, and population data is a very popular way to look at growth and evaluate projections on future growth, but we really kind of wanted to drive a point home here in looking at residential building permits from 2023. So first of all, this represents a collaborative effort between all of the agencies and jurisdictions working together on this project, which in my mind is a pretty amazing accomplishment, and appreciate this forum for putting that together and driving this effort and supporting it. But residential building permits is speaking very strongly to the growth here. And definitely we're looking at compiling data from 2024, and I appreciate Mr. Hicks showing historic data behind building permits. Unfortunately, I don't know what percentage of this is represented by obtainable housing, but certainly we can begin to see how this is working. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we've worked on as a subcommittee, and this has definitely mostly been headed up by Rob's team over at Beaufort County, but we're putting together this digital representation of development data. So this represents the development agreements, planned unit developments, planned district developments, all of our jurisdictions kind of call them a little bit something different, but master planned areas. And basically what you can see here is the balance of what units. So each of these master planned areas are entitled to a certain number of units to build, residential, commercial, and this is showing the balance of what is remaining. So darker purple basically means there are more units available to build. So this is one way that we're working together to understand the data we have and the future that's anticipated, because some of these agreements have been in place for 20 years and are now coming to fruition, which is something that we all understand and are seeing. Next slide, please. So my favorite topic, water and sewer. We're going to spend the next few slides here looking at a few more specific topics and the impacts of growth on our infrastructure and economic drivers. And specific to water and sewer, I need to first acknowledge that while Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer has a very large service area in our counties, there's also water and sewer service being provided by Public Service District and Hilton Head. Town of Ridgeland has its own water and sewer system, and UMSC has Lowcountry Water. So we are a bulk of the two-county system, but there are other providers. So I can only speak to what is in our jurisdiction in our area. So what is essentially on the slide here is a really quick breakdown of 4 projects that, and $150 million investment is on the low side. It's probably more like $180 million. But across 4 projects that are responding to growth. Out of our 3-year CIP that's currently approved at this point in time, that a $590 million capital program, 65% of that is projects related to growth, which is represented here. So we have under construction right now at Cherry Point in Perrysburg. You guys have probably seen the storage tank going up in Buckwalter, and then Bluffton area improvements, which we're grateful to have some funding from RIA for that. But this is what a lot of the work is going on for us, in addition to the rest of our multi-million-dollar capital program. I just wanted to point out that we are responding to the growth. We're working hard to be proactive and grateful to successful master planning that our organization, that the authority has done to anticipate this and plan for it. And we're currently in a new master plan, have a new master plan project going on, and looking forward to more projections and future planning for that. I'd like to introduce Dana Bauer. She's going to speak about the next couple slides.
Hey, good morning. My name is Dana Bauer. So I'm the coordinator for the South Carolina Lowcountry Sentinel Landscape, which is really a partnership program working at the regional scale focused on our Beaufort military installations, but we work with federal, regional, state, and private partners. Go to the next slide. And so this is going to run through from 2001 to 2025. You can see in black are the developed areas, green are the protected lands, yellow is what was protected in that particular year. And this is going to kind of roll through. And I think it speaks to both the incredible amount of conservation work that is being done in this region to protect those environmentally significant and sensitive areas, but also the growth of our communities. And I think it's a little bit harder to see incrementally from year to year, but if we were to kind of go back and look at 2001 compared to 2025, I think we would see what we're all seeing, the amount of population growth and development that's happening in our 2 counties. And so I think, this is kind of a critical point from what we heard earlier on the work of the Housing Trust, and also looking at growth, where that growth is going to continue occurring and what are the constraints. And so that's sort of what, this growth subcommittee has been focusing on, understanding better. I'm going to roll to the next slide. And so, again, obviously, I work closely with the Air Station, Paris Island, and the Naval Hospital through this Sentinel Landscape Partnership. And so, in a growth context, recognizing that, this has a regional footprint. So, our military installations are in Beaufort and Port Royal area. But both from a military training aspect, there's a regional footprint across this. You can see this is a very cluttered map, but you can see the airspace and flight training corridors kind of in the blue and green snakes all over the map. So there's a regional training footprint, but also when we think about, our region really as a military community, both from an economic standpoint, you can see up in the corner there, the presence of the military is really a huge economic driver for the community. So across the 3 installations, we have over $2.5 billion each year that are generated. That's through jobs, contracts, services to support that population. And when we talk about growth and residential housing, obviously there's active duty independents that live, some of them on base, but a lot of them are out in the community, in addition to, retirees, veteran populations. And so, when we're looking at growth, and really what we're talking about, what Rob spoke to, is preserving quality of life. That's ultimately what we're kind of talking about, is how can we support our community, support local economy, but preserve our Lowcountry quality of life? And just throwing in, so from a military context as well, when we look at preserving kind of the economic driver associated with our military, quality of life is increasingly becoming more and more of a component when you talk about future basing decisions and new missions coming to installations. They're increasingly looking at community quality of life for military. And so, one of the things we've been looking at is looking at that military community nexus when we're talking about growth and development. And I think Rob's going to come back up, make another appearance. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I think, there's quite a number of issues related to rapid growth. Some other issues, things that maybe you don't think about at first is, the impact on medical care. We do have a more elderly population in the Lowcountry because of retirees, and there's a real demand, not just for there's a statewide nursing shortage, but even specialists, in our hospital facilities. You can go to the next slide, and we'll have all this information available. And then finally, I don't really know if I need to speak on transportation, but one of the most visible impacts of growth is, our ability to get around. And, as we project into the future, we're looking at, with no additional improvements, quite a bit of more failing intersections and road sections. And so, as a region, it has been a real challenge over the last 20, 30 years to raise funds for roads and road widenings, new roads, because, the amount of money coming from the federal and state government is not nearly enough to pay for the improvements that we need locally to shoulder the growth that we have. If you go to the next slide. We do have, in this region, we have a history of regional planning. The northern and southern regional plans were efforts that we made about 15 years ago. And really, So Loco is kind of the second iteration of a committee that, is looking over originally at the southern region. Now we're really county-wide to try to coordinate growth for the county. In addition, we've done joint planning efforts for the air station, trying to prevent encroachment, the stormwater design manual, which was one of the first, accomplishments of this committee. So we do have this real history of regional planning. But I do believe that our appetite to do a full-blown planning effort as a region, with all the chapters of a comprehensive plan, I don't think necessarily that is what we're proposing as a committee as our best path forward. And if we go to the next slide, um, there are other ways that that a region can work together, produce a product, and maybe be memorialized through local intergovernmental agreements that I think are more effective and might be more appropriate for Soloco. And interesting, we had talked about the regional planning efforts we've had in our county. A couple years ago, I was invited to Williamson County, Tennessee, which is the county directly south of Nashville. It's actually one of the wealthiest communities in the country. I guess a lot of country music singers live there. But they had 7 different jurisdictions that they were trying to modify their growth boundaries, which they have to do something that Tennessee requires. But they had asked me to speak about our regional planning efforts because they were very interested in the accomplishments we made. But they didn't do a full-blown plan. They did something in their community they called a symposium, where they invited different speakers and kind of looked at what are the necessary steps, to engage in a regional planning effort. So that's one model. Another model is last fall we had what they called a regional accelerator. This was looking specifically at resilience planning issues, but we had a room full of stakeholders with some very guided activities to kind of look at, working together as a group and working through some difficult questions and trying to come to some consensus. And I actually believe that this type of effort, a workshop that would be a single or maybe 2-day, 2 separate day event is the best model, where we would have an independent facilitator, because I think it's important when we're dealing with so many local jurisdictions to have somebody maybe who is a disinterested party but is very much aware of the importance of regional planning and maybe asking some tough questions. And we also believe that this should involve elected officials and other stakeholders in the region, that having the decision makers at the table engaged in this process, I think is going to be making sure that it is more in line with the wishes of the local jurisdictions, but also I think that would ensure much greater chance of success. And we think that, the final product out of this could be some sort of roadmap, whether it's a combination of a map, some general agreements on land use, some policies that we all agree on, maybe sharing of information that is in some sort of, short document that we could all adopt by resolution. That's kind of our vision for where we think the best path forward. And I guess what we would like to request of Soloco is that our committee, we have some thoughts about what this might mean in terms of, if we did hire an outside facilitator, what it might mean in terms of cost. So I guess my question to the committee is, if there is value in pursuing this, what we would like to do is come back at the April meeting, or whatever next meeting you can get us on the agenda, to come up with some more specifics and really chart how that would, if the interest of the committee, how that would then be forwarded into an actionable item.
So what we've done in the past, Rob, and again, the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust was a good example, and the stormwater ordinance was the same. What we would request of you is a estimate on what this was cost. Then what would and break it down by population, what it would cost each jurisdiction to hire this facilitator. And then we have to, again, take it back to our councils, whoever wants to participate, because each one of these things are optional. So cost, total, how it would break down by population for each jurisdiction, and then when you have that, come back, tell us, and then we'll take it to our jurisdictions to ask each jurisdiction if they want to participate. That's how we've done it in the past.
Mayor Williams, I wanted to, if everyone on that committee would stand up, I want to say a big thank you to everyone that was on it. This group was amazing. They've done so much work and so many good discussions that we had. This is just the tip of the iceberg of the work that they did. I agree with you, Mayor Williams. I think they'd be ready probably by the April meeting to do that. And we were, I'll say it, wanted to get it to the jurisdictions before budget time too. So people can think about it in their budget.
April would be
April would be ideal.
ideal. So if you come back, because then we have to take it, each one of us has to take it to our councils to see if we want to participate.
Rob, do you envision this being like north of Broad, south of Broad, two different events, or one big event with everybody's together?
I think our vision is it could be a single event, but I think we recognize that in the northern part of the county, we do have growth boundaries. So that would be taken into account. But, the questions of, are those working for us, could be brought up.
Real quick, just a comment. And first of all, thank you for putting the presentation together. That was a lot to digest and a lot of really good information, great slides. My question would be, is the focus growth boundaries with the understanding that there are growth boundaries in place north of the Broad? And or does that include the development codes in place? Because what's confusing to me a lot of times is, as a newly elected official, trying to get a better understanding of how things are working, the development codes are confusing because I'm like, here we have growth boundaries in place with identified goals to say preserve 60% of the land mass or whatever the identified initiative is. But then your development code doesn't encourage that. It almost encourages a competitive spirit because a lot of the development that's allowed in, say, a municipality is also allowed in the county. So if I wanted to build a hotel with 25 rooms or more, I could do it in the county or I can do it in the city. If I wanted to build on one single parcel and I wanted to have 3 residents, I could do it in the county, I can do it in the city. So I'm not sure that it's necessarily a growth boundary issue. It might be that the development codes don't complement each other. In fact, they compete in a lot of ways. And so would the mission of this charrette both discuss growth boundaries and how the development codes could better work in conjunction to preserve property and then encourage more dense development where it makes sense and infrastructure already exists?
Yeah, I think it could do both. I think, it could be that maybe the first step is agreeing on the boundaries, and then this effort could lead to some further tasks, because I think if we're getting down to ordinance amendments or really taking a look at zoning ordinances, that's a much larger task. And maybe that, as we look forward, it could be, intermediate and long-term goals. But one of the things that we did in the northern part of the county, because we recognize that, is that we drew the boundaries, but we drew in policies that encouraged annexation, so that if somebody was considering an upzoning in the county, that they were first given the right of first refusal to consider annexation into a municipality. So, we did look at that through a series of policies built into an intergovernmental agreement. So there are different steps that we could take, but I agree. I mean, I think having better coordinated zoning is going to be, certainly make the job easier.
Anyone else? So will, barring you tell me something different, I'll put you on the April agenda, and you can come back to the committee with a cost and what, if you could outline exactly what we're looking to accomplish in that charrette, so everybody understands what they're paying for and what we plan to get out of it, okay?
Okay.
Does that make sense, Ms. Howard?
Yes, sir, that sounds good.
Mayor?
Yes.
in that estimate, could you give us options?
Mhm.
It always seems that we get one option, yes or no. And I like to see maybe one charrette or maybe multiple charrettes and see how much that costs. And maybe it's beneficial because where you put it is going to be difficult, to tell you the truth, because you got Jasper, which is going to be how many people from Jasper are going to come to Beaufort, or how many people from Beaufort are going to come to Jasper. So just maybe a kind of a estimate of each one so we have an idea, which is better.
Okay. Yeah, and it could be that sometimes even when you do an RFQ or RFP and get results from a consultant, they might have do phase A and then there's an option to do phase B, and maybe that's an additional workshop or something. So we could look at something like that.
Okay, thank you. And to all our subcommittees who have worked really hard, childcare, Beaufort, Jasper Housing Trust, and of course the Growth Bounties, you've been working on this. Thank you so much for putting in the time to help make our region a better place and a better planned community. So thank you on behalf of the board. Just real briefly, we have a couple of items already for April agenda. We'll ask the 20-year plan task force that is being planned to come forward. We'll put the growth boundaries on the agenda as well. And I think, Josh, you had recommend someone to come talk about the wetlands, I believe. Ms. Kimmel, that you sent me her name. So I'll reach out to them because we told them we would put them on the agenda. The board put that as one of the things they wanted to hear about, okay? But I haven't reached out to her yet.
Okay, and if you need anything from me on that, just let me know.
Okay, well, and I think Kate Schaefer wanted to be part of that conversation as well, right, Kate? I'm full of surprises today.
Mr. Chairman, maybe, did Bluffton just pass an ordinance protecting wetlands? Are you,
Yes. Well,
are you willing to speak to a little bit about how that conversation?
That's not a bad idea, you know, and I had this conversation with our council as well, that they changed their buffers to wetlands, right, to 50 feet? So maybe...
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to just speak real quick on that?
No, what I'd like to do is put you...
I guess I just volunteered myself, right?
I'd like to put you on the April agenda.
Okay, yeah, you should have kept my mouth shut.
Because I'm already guilty of making this go over an hour. I don't want to add to my guilt-ridden conscience today. So we'll put down the Bluffton ordinance and Ms. Kimmel. Okay, I think I got enough to fill an hour. So. Okay, yeah, you know, okay. I won't hear the end of this now. Thank you all for joining us. I think it's some very productive updates. Again, thank you to everyone who worked on this. Have a nice day. Have a nice week, everyone.